Good evening, everybody. The elders, thanks for the opportunity. Sometimes or oftentimes I get busy with my job, life, don't take time to sit, reflect, and have conversation with some of my good friends about the Bible and the responsibilities that we have as men in this congregation. Blaine's comment he had a few months ago about he's keeping tabs on every man in his congregation, seeing what kind of people we are, what kind of leaders we are in this church. And that had a spark in me that we don't oftentimes take time to think about what our roles are and to shepherd our young men and tell them what responsibilities that they have. And to tell them that the men in this room, you're held to a higher standard than your peers outside of it. There are many marriages that struggle, many people that don't lead their families, they don't lead their employees or their friends. They cave, they fall to the temptations of the world around us. And we know better here. We study the Word. We know what God's expectations are of us. And our expectations for ourselves should be higher than those of our friends outside of this congregation. So tonight I have a few verses I'm going to read, primarily talk about the roles of a husband, and put some perspective on a few major parts of the Bible that we say and sometimes lose their gravity or their meaning. So I have 4 bullet points. Hit those first. Our roles are to protect, provide, comfort, and lead our families. And protection is obvious from the gremlins, criminals, people that want to hurt us, but also the temptations of what the schools are teaching, what the internet pops up in front of your face, the messages that come up on a commercial when you're watching cartoons with your kid. A lot of stuff out there. And a lot of stuff needs to be addressed with godly explanations and why we think differently than some of the alphabet people are putting out in front of us today. And secondly, many of you probably don't know the stories of what I've done when Audrey gets upset about something, but to default, I'm on her side every time. If someone hurts her feelings or if she's let down by something, 100% I'm behind her. And, that's what we're supposed to do as husbands, defend our wives, our kids, the people in this church, and, back our people, employees. My boss the other day, he had some comments about one of my employees, and I kind of fired back at him. He's like, didn't expect that. I'm like, these are my people. I have to go to bat for them because nobody else will. Second point I have is to provide, and this one is very important. It's very touchy, but if you want to open your Bibles, it's 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8. And the context of this is, we're speaking about widows here and providing for them. But 1 Timothy 5:8 says, "But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse off than an unbeliever." And that's about as serious of an offense as you can have, to be the same as an unbeliever in God's eye. Not something to take lightly. And it's not there's a punishment to it. And we know better. That's not the first time anyone in here has heard that verse. And it falls upon the leaders of the household to do that. And I guess to preface this, everybody when they talk about marriage wants to talk about how wives have to submit. That's the punchline. It is, in my opinion, easier to follow than it is to lead. There's accountability there. You're responsible, and you're measured by how you do it. It's our responsibility to guide our families, lead them to God, keep them safe, and to keep our family protected from the outside world. And that's a tall order and a hard thing to do. And all day, I have roughly 100 people that report to me. I want some days just to be told what to do. I don't like every question and you have to give them an answer because you don't know. And that's a hard part about being the leader is people expect you to have the answers and you don't have them all. But it's your job to seek wise counsel from people and get the best advice you can to make the best decision you can at that time. Moving on to comfort your spouse. 1 Thessalonians 5:11. And context of this is Day of the Lord, but our job as a spouse, and I've told people this before, but whenever you marry your wife, they're giving you all the trust in the world. You hold the scale in your hand of how their day goes, day to day, week to week, month to month. Sometimes we have to put our finger on that scale and balance it out to help them from the difficulties that they have in this life. Moving on to lead. Oh, I didn't read 1 Thessalonians, did I? Therefore, comfort each other and edify one another, just as you are also doing. That's tough for guys sometimes. We can't read our wives' minds, and sometimes they think we should be able to understand what they're thinking, but we can't. We think we're very binary, yes, no, black, white, don't read between the lines a lot. And even if we dismiss something, doesn't mean we didn't think about it. It never even entered our head. That's just the truth of being a guy sometimes. And lastly, to lead on these points. I got a lot more to go over, but right now we're touching on roles of a husband. Ephesians 5:23. For the husband is head of the wife, as also Christ is head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. I said leading is hard, not having the answers, not knowing what to say, not having the thought to comfort your wife. But there's a room full of people here, men with a lot more experience than I. I have 7 years. Not a lot, not insignificant. There are some people that have a few months. There are some people that have a year or two. But there's a lot of wisdom in these walls, not just from the elders, from the members. Everyone has very unique circumstances that they've lived through, that they've navigated, and you can learn from other people's mistakes, and people are happy to help you. I look at, people still in school and high school, and you think that you're really, really smart. You got it figured out, but as I got older, 22, 3, 4, 5, I realized that these old people aren't so stupid. They actually might have an understanding about what they're talking about. And, it's a reality. And sometimes young guys won't go ask the old ones. Old ones have to look at the young ones and give them some advice, even if it's unsolicited. And even though they probably will dismiss it and not listen, help them out anyway. Next part of leading, and have a few bullet points here. You're responsible for your family's actions. The people in this room are inadvertently responsible for the other people in this room's actions. If you do something that brings shame upon the church, it is reflect on all of us. You go to work, people know where you go to church, you worship, and you have a filthy mouth. What are they going to think about the rest of us? They're going to think that we all are that way, which is not true. Being accountable for the actions So there's a difference between responsibility and accountability. Accountability in my head, it rolls up. I at work am accountable for every one of my employees, and any mistake that they might make, ultimately it falls to me. And it might not be a reflection of me, but I'm the one that gets to deal with it. I'm the one who it looks bad upon to the people over me. And it's my job to address it. Lift the burden from your family. This is a pretty big one to me. And, you know, as the male or the man, you get to make all the decisions. You get to control, more or less, how your family operates. Every problem that comes into your family's life is your burden to bear on your shoulders. To fix it, to help your family move past it, and to make them feel relieved of that burden. You know, there's another aspect to this that I was most worried about when I found out I was having a child, and that was I was scared I would be too hard on them. Prayed for a softened heart, and I got it. It's crazy how prayers get answered, but you know, you have a little girl and you turn into a big baby. I'm not too good at disciplining Kara. She's happy, she's smiling. Why would I change that? She's not even in this room because she needs to be disciplined. And Audrey tells me, you need to do a better job. You need to be harder on her. And you think you'll do it, then you look at her and you're just like, there's no way. You know, sorry. It's not there for me. But to the men, you ask your wife to marry you. They don't ask you. So just like your child doesn't ask to be born. You brought them in, you asked them to marry you, and you owe it to them to give the absolute maximum that you can give them. You've got to do your best. It's the same when you join a job, same when you join a membership of a church. You owe it to everyone there to give them your best. That's much easier said than done, but another aspect I work on diligently, sometimes it's hard, but to say I'm sorry more often, or that I love you more often. You know, it doesn't bug me that Audrey's often wrong, but if I say I'm sorry, it makes it a lot better. And, you know, in some cases, it's just the argument's not worth having, or the end result is not worth the fight. Just cave, take your pride out of it. I think I do as good a job as I can do, but still working on it. There's no fight or argument worth driving a wedge between yourself, your wife, your kids, your parents, or your friends. That's a tough one, especially when you grow up and your parents still kind of want to have the strings on you. And you got to say, you know, I'm going to do it this way. They still disagree with you. Sometimes it's better for everyone if you just do it. Cave, or have a conversation with them about it on why you want to do it a different way. But, you know, the mortality of this, and I guess to dive into another layer here, and I don't know how far down this road I can go, but stress, problems, items, they're not super important. And one day something can happen and you realize that there's very few things in your life that actually matter to you, that you can't replace, that you can't change. That's what I stress about. That's what I worry about. Things that I can't replace. Everything else that can be bought might be an inconvenience, might cost a little money. You know, we had the largest spill in my company's history at work about a month and a half ago. Filled a pond up with salt water. Big problem. Got calls from my boss, his boss, his boss. All the way to the CEO personally called me on that next Monday, and he said, Dillon, how you doing? What can I do to help you? I said, John, I need a checkbook, but other than that, we're okay. And he said, why are you so positive about this? I said, nobody got hurt. I hadn't even killed a fish yet. You ask me, it's unfortunate, but all in all, everybody went home. We made a mess. We're going to clean it up. And he, to my surprise, said, you're right. There's many people who get hung up in semantics, and I'm going to eat these words whenever we start building our house, but some things just aren't worth the fight, and money's not one of them. You will fight over it, I promise you, but at the end of the day, it can be replaced. It comes and it goes, and you can't take any of it with you when you leave. And so sometimes it's better just to buy the lamp or the piece of furniture, and you get to look at it the rest of your life. Not worth the fight. Jody Day, I think everyone in here probably remembers Jody. He has a quote that he said, and it sticks out in my mind. It's really easy to be happy when times are good. Be happy with the Lord. Be happy with your church, your situation, your position. Whenever times are hard, it gets real difficult for you to maintain that happiness and the upliftingness, reaching out to people whenever you're fighting challenges on your own. But in the hard times, it's when you turn to God. And it's a shame that it is that way oftentimes, but I can tell you from experience that's 100% true. An important part of that is to build the foundation in your faith. Makes it a lot easier to turn to God if you're already talking to Him every day. You already run that filter through your head of what would Jesus do, or how would a Christian react to this, or how can this situation better be handled, or call somebody at the church, your preacher, your elder, a deacon, a friend, and ask their advice on how to navigate certain situations. But I like control. Most men do, I think. I like to control my situation, my environment. I'll probably seldom ride with anyone in this congregation. I like to drive. I'd rather drive. If I want to leave, I can leave. If she calls me and says I need to be somewhere, I can just go. It's hard for me when situations happen that I don't have any control over. And those will happen. And as the leader of your house, you feel it's your job to control it, to help the situation, to add some sense of order to it. And, ultimately, sometimes the solution, you're on your knees and praying. And as difficult as that is for a man to do and admit it and say that they've been there, I have. And unfortunately, I know many people in this congregation have as well. And I'll probably get teary up here. It's a reaction, a little over 2 years, and still does this, or nearly 2 years. And that's something that I'm actually not ashamed of. Before I had a kid and probably got married, I went years, I would say, without crying. Whenever I see a guy cry, it means he cares. And he lets his emotions be shown, but he's not afraid to cry in front of people. There's great examples. I'm skipping around this page because there's certain parts I just won't be able to get through. But, there's a love, a sense of leadership, a sense of responsibility that happens when you have a kid. And Glenn told me the day that I got married to his daughter. Didn't understand this at the time. Now I have a completely different outlook for this quote. He said, choose Audrey every time. So you're like, well, I'm marrying her, so I chose her for this. But there was a different message to that, and I'm not going to get into it here, but I understand what you mean. Another example of leadership that he probably doesn't even remember he said to me, but I apply it often. It's Mike Crossland, about when they changed the directions of how the fans blow. I think you were sitting over here, and y'all changed it. And because you changed it to the opposite side of where you sat, so you had to move to not have other people in the congregation upset because they want to move to the other side of the church. He inconvenienced himself to move as an example that I'm not doing this to conform to me. I'm doing it because we have the request, but he simply took the undesirable position of moving as an example to others that can't complain to him because they have to move. His response is, I already did it. Tracy Blankenship, first lesson I ever heard here. I said it a few months ago up here, and still apply this one to my life. If someone asks you to pray, pray. And he had a story about an athletic banquet. I learned it in the old high school classroom right down there the first Sunday I ever attended here. And from time to time, when someone asks me to pray, not here, but somewhere else, and you're like, there's a lot of people, don't know them, that pops in my head, and I say, got to pray. And another one, Cody Blunt. When COVID happened, he worked tirelessly to make sure we could still have church, whether it be virtually. We could attend. We had our church bread. We had the juice. He led the congregation through a dark time in the church's past. And, it's lesson of leadership. But you also can get lessons from poor leaders. And learn from their mistakes. I've learned some very valuable lessons in my life, and many of you don't know. My dad and I did not have a close relationship, and one of the last conversations I ever had with him was, he said one of his biggest regrets was he didn't teach me how to be a man and a father. And I said, you did. And he understood what I meant. He didn't teach me the right way. He showed me the wrong way, and if you do the opposite of that often, you will find a better result. So don't let excuse of poor leaders make you be a bad one. You can learn from their mistakes. You can see where they fall short. And this is going to be the last one, and it'll be the hardest for me, but God's love for us. Now, talked about control and how, as a man, a leader, you want to help control the situation. We all know God has unlimited powers, and he can snap his fingers and do anything he wants, or have any result that he desires. November 1st, 2022, Kara had open heart surgery. Rough day, wasn't fun. I slept after she got out, and Audrey and Leah Camp were in there, and I walked them down to the parking garage around 10:30. Said bye to them, come back up. Kara's, knocked out of sleep. Come back up, and we would always kind of race, and you get butterflies in your stomach. When you turn a corner in that hospital, you could see your room, and being there for so long, you learn that where the doctors sit, and there's rooms and a horseshoe around it, and basically where your room is how bad they think you are off. Kara was right across from where the doctor sits. So you pick up on that, you're not in a great spot, but she just had thoracic surgery. When I turned that corner, every nurse on the floor was in that room. The big lights were on. The attending physician was there. The doctor that cut her chest open was there, and the anesthesiologist. So you show up and you're like, what's going on? She became conscious, didn't like all the stuff going on, and she had the highest blood pressure she had ever had, very high heart rate, 240 beats per minute. And that's good, that means her heart's working, you would think, but she just had her aorta stitched together. And so the problem with that is that it can blow up. And if that happened, it would be very sudden, and There's nothing they could do about it. So they gave her all the morphine they could possibly give her. Wasn't working. Sitting there with the doctor, and she says, "What's going on?" And I said, "Ativan's worked for her before." And she said, "Ativan." I said, "Yes." They got it, pushed it. Surgeons wanting to open her back up to look, make sure nothing's damaged. Anesthesiologist is getting rocuronium, fentanyl ready, ketamine. And they're about to put her back out again and go back into her chest. Ativan worked perfect, knocked her right out. Most difficult image I've ever seen was her passing out right then. But, the only thing I could do was be there. That's it. There was uncertainty of what was going to happen in the next 10 seconds, next few minutes. You can't take away the pain. As a parent, you see your kids suffering. What's the one thing you want to do? You want to take away their pain. In that message, though, I think of Jesus on the cross. Think of him getting tortured. And the restraint that was showed to not stop it. There's not a parent in this room that wouldn't snap their fingers to make their kids stop hurting. I can't fathom actually restraining myself to do it. In that moment with her, I'd have done anything I could have done to stop it. And, you pray a prayer only a parent could pray. But God restrained himself for us. He let Jesus die. He let him go through all the hassle, the pain, and the suffering. And he did it so we would have hope. So we could live forever with him. So we could be forgiven of our sins. Jeff, I'm about to wrap up so we can get ready. Your life is nothing more than a culmination of the choices you make. Good ones, bad ones. If you have trouble making one, call someone here. We'll help give you the best guidance we can. But I'm giving you a choice. You can stay where you're at, or you can come up here and get baptized. Another note about this before I wrap up is many of you are new members here. Our church is small. Sometimes it seems like, we're just a small church. I've experienced it. This church has rallied together, communicated, sent prayers, done a lot in a time of crisis. So if you have a problem that's ailing you, something you need to talk about, lay it before us. We got broad shoulders. We can handle it. Jeff, that's all I got. If you need to be baptized or need to talk about anything, I'll be right here.